Chapter 11. Displaced. The Alpha Guardian wasn't the only minder heading towards the blue planet. Magus knew all the ships of the fleet and who was on each. He accessed passive ship systems which communicated rudimentary data on the fleet's passengers. Some of these minders still lived. Perhaps this was true of both sections of the fleet. For the ones overshooting Earth, he couldn't do anything about them anyway. They would perish eventually, dying peacefully in their sleep. But what of the ones that followed the Alpha? Had these minders been freed, or were they now serving as her lackeys? His understanding of the situation began to evolve. The Hive's death was still a mystery. Had the ships he had constructed somehow malfunctioned? No, because even then the Hive's guiding intelligence would live on in the parts of their organism that hadn't joined them on their journey. Was the Alpha responsible for the Hive's demise? It was possible. She had tremendous ability, including the telepathy she had used to trick him. But the Hive had safeguards in the form of other minders who should have protected them. And if she had been the cause of the Hive's death, why allow him to live? She had nurtured his hate, and now he was free. The salient fact was that she lived on, and still held every gift the Hive had bestowed upon her. He doubted she would yield any of her power, even if not doing so meant she would never revert back to whatever her original state had been before being captured by the Hive. None of the remaining minders were strong enough to resist her. These would serve her, at least for now. He questioned his own free will. Was the choice to follow his own, or had the Alpha planted the thought, leading him on into another trap? Whether the other minders were her servants or her willing accomplices, they were now his enemies. He would have to stand alone against her. I hated being the one who cried, but when I made it to the other girls, the waterworks started and I sobbed and gasped with post-panic exhaustion as Mindy put an arm around me. What happened? She asked.
Where were you? Bethany demanded. Where did you go?
I heard them, but I couldn't calm down. I sat on the low wall and tried to catch my breath. They were all still there, as was the van. As I had been running back, some part of my mind wondered if they and the van would all be gone, and I was caught in some sort of nightmare, alone. Someone handed me a paper napkin. I blew my nose. What happened? Mindy asked again. Bethany waited. I wasn't sure where to start. None of it made sense. I found Officer Byrd and Officer Taylor, I said. I took a breath. They're at the grocery store. They're sick or dying. Bethany's eyes went wide. What? I shook my head. They're all in the back room with a bunch of other people, just lying there. Officer Byrd. He has some kind of disease on his face. He tried to grab me. He was talking crazy, like gibberish. We can't wait here. We have to go get help. Mindy kept asking questions. Too many, her words spilling out without pause.
Mindy, stop,
Bethany said, and Mindy paused. Bethany looked at me for a moment.
How much time left on your sentence?
I don't know. I was too flustered to answer.
Everyone knows.
20 days, I said.
I have 39 days. If we leave here, we're risking getting locked up for quite a bit longer.
I know what I saw.
But I didn't see it. If Officer Byrd is there, we can try to help him.
Maybe he's gone crazy or he's high, I said. The thought of going back was triggering a physical response. My hands began trembling. Mindy tried to take my hands, but I pushed her away. Then I nodded. I know it's crazy. There's no way I can expect you to believe me. And I guess asking you to trust me is too much. So we go look. All of us. And we stay together.
First things first, Bethany said. Let's find that manager and see if we can get someone to vouch for what we're about to do.
We pounded on the glass door to the office. We shouted until we got tired. The notion of not splitting up hadn't taken, and only Bethany and Mindy were with me. The other 3 had chosen a room to wait out our troubles and refused to leave its safety. "They're going to have a hard time retaining me as a customer," I said as I examined the window to the office. A row of flower pots lined the wall under the porte-cochere. I picked one up. It was full of dirt, but whatever had been growing was long gone. Bethany and Mindy stepped back, and then I threw the pot into the glass door. It made a spiderweb mark before it dropped and cracked. I went to get another. It was larger than the first one and quite a bit heavier. I waddled forward and was preparing to heave when I saw the manager through the glass. He held a revolver and was pointing it at me. I put the pot down. Bethany noticed the man and stepped back from the door. "We need to talk to you," I shouted. His eyes were wide and he looked scared. Was it just from his run-in with the boys? He wore a scarf wrapped around his neck. I raised my hands up to show I wasn't carrying a weapon. The barrel of the revolver didn't waver. "Go away," he said, his voice tremulous. "The boys that were here weren't with us," I said. "They're gone." Mindy nodded in agreement. "The officers that brought us are in trouble. Please, you have to help us." "We don't have any food," Mindy said. "People in the grocery store are sick," I said. "Just stay in your rooms. Take whatever you want from the vending machines. Help will come soon enough." He backed away from the glass. Bethany pounded on it. For a moment I thought her fist would break through. He was clearly startled and he turned the gun towards her. She froze. "Leave if you have to," he said. "Just don't try to come in here." He turned and vanished back into the darkness of the lobby, leaving us standing there. He was gone too quickly for me to be sure, but it appeared he had a growth on his ear. "Well, that sucks," Bethany said. She looked like she might try to kick down the door. I recognized that glower. "Did you see what was on his face?" I asked. "The scarf?" Mindy asked. "He had that junk growing on him like what I saw on Officer Byrd." "How could you tell?" Bethany asked. "It was so dark in there." "Maybe I'm wrong." Mindy was looking in the direction of the lobby. "He said we could have what's in the vending machines." Bethany and I looked at each other. Mindy needed to reset her priorities. We had an emergency to deal with. But as one, we headed towards the lounge. I grabbed another flower pot along the way. The front of the candy vending machine broke in with a crash as I swung the terracotta pot at it like a wrecking ball. The cracked plastic came out in pieces, affording us easy access to the bounty inside. I sucked down a package of salted almonds before moving on to the Snickers. Then I put a few candy bars in my back pocket for later. The Pepsi machine looked more formidable, but the water was still running from the spigot on the counter. I drank a few cups worth. The other 3 girls still lingered near the rooms. Mindy gathered an armful of goodies and took it up to them. "Think it's smart to split up?" I asked Bethany as we waited. "They have to make their own choice," she said. "But they listen to you. You guys worship and pray together and you're the leader of your group." "You sit in on our meetings and it's not like you listen to me." "Yeah, but they will." "It doesn't work like that. I won't make them come with us." "Fair enough." "And they'll be safer here. We don't all need to be dragged along on a wild goose chase just to get a couple months added to our sentences." She didn't say anything else. I had thought she believed me, but at least she was willing to go look, so I swallowed my reply. When Mindy returned, we went down to the road and walked towards the center of town. I got really nervous as we approached the market. Officer Byrd was a big guy. If he had lost his grip on reality, he would be dangerous. Somewhere there was a deputy that was unaccounted for, which meant Byrd could be armed, and all those other people in there. What had been wrong with them? "This is a mistake," I said. "We're here," Bethany said. "We're not turning around." Mindy appeared ready to walk into the store. "Wait," I said. I looked around for something that would work as a weapon, but there was nothing. Bethany pushed the door all the way open. Suddenly, she didn't appear that eager to step over the threshold. It made me feel a little better. I went first. Bethany took a moment to check behind one of the registers. She found a flashlight. It worked. She shined its comforting light ahead of us, and we headed towards the back. I again chose the produce aisle, as it led straight to the stockroom door. Everyone was gone. They were all right here, I said. The glow sticks were weaker, giving off the last of their green light. A pungent smell of sickness hung in the air. Bethany shined the light around. Wide brown stains marked the floor where the pile of bodies had lain. Was it blood? Stacked boxes of lettuce sat nearby. The bottoms of the boxes were damp, and similar stains marked the floor underneath. The back room was large, but we searched it. There was no one there or in the office, but I found another flashlight as well as an iPad. Neither one would turn on. I checked the phones but got no dial tone. Bethany opened the back door and looked outside. There's no one here. I'm not making this up, I said. With the light coming in, I saw strange drag marks on the floor. A rack of bread and buns was tipped over, its contents scattered. Bags of bread were crushed and torn. I saw English muffins lying in what looked like pools of vomit. Look, I said, pointing down. They were right here. So someone got sick, Bethany said. Doesn't prove what you say you saw. She went back into the store. Mindy and I followed. Wait, Beth, I said. Don't you think it's weird there's no one here? There's a sheriff's car outside, other cars that belong to customers and employees. Where do you think they all could have gone? I don't know. Bethany checked all the aisles and looked behind the deli counter. Mindy grabbed a box of Golden Grahams cereal from an end display and tore it open. Put that back, I said. We need to eat, she said. She began crunching on the cereal. With growing frustration, I walked back to the front of the store and looked outside. The dog had stopped barking. Once again, French Meadows was silent. I checked the other vehicles parked near the entrance. One white Toyota 4Runner had its door open. I got inside and searched for keys. Nothing. I tested the light controls but couldn't get anything to come on. I tried the horn. No sound came out of the car. It was deader than dead, and keys wouldn't help. I dug into the back and found some road flares and a flashlight. The flashlight worked. I stuck them all into my pockets. From somewhere close, I heard a pop, pop, pop. Gunshots. Loud. I got out of the car as fast as I could and scurried to the front of the store. The sound still echoed, but no more reports came. Then I heard a shrill scream. It was a prolonged sound and definitely from someone in pain. It came from the direction of the houses. A bellow followed. A different voice. Male. Not words, but a roar. It was Officer Bird's voice. Impossibly loud, as if it were amplified. I backed into the store. Bethany and Mindy waited for me, both crouched low. Bethany holding a butcher knife. Mindy still had her box of cereal. Judging by their faces, they had heard what I had heard. Was that an animal? Mindy asked. I shook my head. I don't know. What direction was the gunfire coming from? Bethany asked. The way we came, I said. I'm not 100% certain which side of the street, but it was close. I really think we need to get out of here through the back door. And go where? Bethany asked. Anywhere but here. We're in the middle of town. It just feels so exposed. She nodded. We moved to the stockroom and exited through the back door, leaving the market behind us. Chapter 12. Gatecrasher. As expected, Magus hadn't been able to catch up. The Alpha Guardian's ship's lead had actually grown, leaving her own portion of the fleet even further behind her. All of their relative speeds had been identical, but she had made the turn into a tighter arc. Her ships followed. For proper touchdown, they would have to disengage their graviton harpoons and use their ion engines for reverse thrust. He watched as her personal ship broke apart into individual modules. They were going too fast. Without Magus or his machines to make adjustments to their final course, he calculated many of the modules would disperse on the blue planet's outer atmosphere. The rest of her fleet would follow suit. He began to doubt she would survive her headlong descent downward. The blue planet's moon eclipsed his view. Perhaps her current course was a fatal mistake, but he doubted she would be so careless as to do anything that would cause her to skip off the planet's atmosphere or impact in an uncontrolled crash. She was a creature of ego and wouldn't entertain such a fate. Suicide wasn't an option for one like her. Ignoring the risk of her detecting his pursuit, he scanned her ship. The hive particles there still lived. He could sense them. A mindless mass identical to the clinging microorganisms aboard his own ship. Without the hive's guiding intelligence, the remainder should have been nothing but dormant living particles. Yet they hungered. She had roused them from their slumber. He made some calculations and realized what would happen when her ships arrived at their new home. The particles would scatter on impact. Many would die, but enough might survive to cover the globe. As soon as the back door of the market clicked closed behind us, I knew leaving the store was a mistake. At least in there we had cover and options. Now we were exposed. I ran behind a white dumpster and looked out at the street. I didn't see anyone. A fence overgrown with ivy and a line of trees separated the market's property from someone's backyard and a home beyond. Mindy was about to start climbing the fence when I motioned for her to hold on. I shook the fence a couple of times and waited. I made a loud kissing sound. "I think it's clear," I said. Bethany swung over the fence. Mindy and I followed. The house was a mobile home on cinder block piers. Ankle-high weeds grew everywhere. 2 cars with flat, rotten tires sat in the side lot. We went to the front of the home and I knocked on the door. There were stacks of newspapers and magazines on a bench on the front porch. A 2-liter soda bottle was half full of cigarette butts. "No one's home," Mindy said. "Would you open the door to us?" I asked. I knocked again. "Hello? We need help. We need to know if you have a phone so we can call the sheriff." Bethany reached in front of me and tried the door. It was locked. "Stand back and I'll kick it in," she said. "Wait," I said. "Let's not do that just yet. It'll be loud and there are other homes to try." The house was the first on a long gravel driveway shared by 3 other homes. The one across the way was a single-level house with black mold growing on the white wood paneling. But on the roof I saw a few metal antennas. I pointed this out and we crossed the driveway. The home had a detached aluminum garage, but the windows were blocked by junk stacked on the inside. I climbed the steps of the house and pounded on the door. I saw a small camera mounted above it. It had no visible lights, but I straightened up anyway. My second knock was more polite. I waited and listened for a 10 count and then tried the knob. Also locked. Bethany fiddled with the front windows, but they didn't budge. We went around the back. A small bathroom window was ajar. I could just reach the screen. It popped off easily enough, and we pushed the window up and open. Mindy was the obvious choice as she was the smallest, but Bethany looked at me. "Give me a boost," I said. I stepped into her cupped hands and she launched me up and in, more forcefully than necessary. I crashed into a bathtub, my legs smacking into the shower curtain and knocking down bottles of shampoo and other products placed along the side of the tub. I got myself up into a crouch and listened. I couldn't hear anyone. "Hello?" I called. "I'm in your house. I need to use your phone." "Hurry up," Bethany hissed from outside. I sighed. She wasn't the one who was going to get shot. An overwhelming smell of cologne lingered in the bathroom. Just awful. I stepped out into the hallway. The place was rank, a palpable mustiness permeating the air. I made my way towards the front of the home past closed doors. The living room had its curtains drawn. I opened them for light. Judging by the large brown sofa, brass wall hangings, and shag carpet, the homeowner was old. I saw pictures on the wall of a gang of younger kids playing at some lake, along with a group of grown-ups wearing swimsuits and smiling for the camera. I unlocked the front door and opened it wide. Bethany and Mindy came inside and closed the door. "Stinks in here," Mindy said. I went into the kitchen and found a phone on the wall. No dial tone. I clicked it a few times for good measure. Mindy opened the refrigerator. "Whoa," she said. It was full of food and everything was still cold. "That's not our top priority," I said. But I tried one of the burners and the flame came on. The place had gas or propane working, which meant we could cook if needed. I turned it off and went through the kitchen and entered a family room, in which a large television was mounted on top of a giant entertainment center cabinet replete with VHS tapes. I browsed the titles: Gunsmoke, The Big Valley, Little House on the Prairie, and Have Gun, Will Travel. There were quite a few hand-labeled movies, mostly westerns and grouped by actor. Lots of John Wayne, Gary Cooper, and Glenn Ford. No Eastwood. Odd. Along the wall was what had to be a complete collection of Larry McMurtry and Elmore Leonard novels, with some Michener thrown in for good measure. I saw a few more photos on one shelf. One was of an older man with a stubbly beard holding a shotgun. He had a dog at his side. "Guy might be a gun owner," I said. "Well, he's not home," Bethany said. I didn't check the bedrooms. She shot me an exasperated look. We headed down the hallway. We found another bathroom and then a master bedroom with a king-sized bed. I opened the final door. It was a dark room with a drawn blackout curtain. Someone was sitting in an office chair with his back to me. Beyond him, a computer and a large radio occupied a cluttered desk. I turned on my flashlight. "Hello?" When I got no answer, I tried. "Excuse me?" I stepped in the room. As I reached my hand towards the chair, Mindy whispered, "Let's go." The man in the chair was the one from the hunting photo. He sat with his chin down on his chest and his eyes at half-mast. I couldn't tell if he was breathing. His mouth hung open. "Sir, hello." I shook his shoulder but got no response. Lights blinked on the radio. It was wired to a shoebox-sized battery at his feet. I heard muffled speech coming from a pair of headphones in his lap. "The radio works," I said. "It has power." A microphone sat on the desk in front of him. Had he died while using it? I couldn't bring myself to pick up the headphones. Bethany leaned forward and examined the radio. "I've got a cousin who's into this," she said. "Do you know how to use it?" "No." The man looked up at us. I screamed. I shined my flashlight in his face. His skin was covered with tiny bumps, which crusted over his eyes and nose and the corners of his mouth. "Help me," he gasped. The bumps grew on both the back and palm of his hand. It had spread between his fingers, connecting them, making the hand look like a fleshy mitten. I backed up, stumbling over Bethany's feet. He grabbed Bethany by the arm and yanked her close, pulling her off balance. She screamed and started flailing. Before I could get up to help, Mindy raced forward and tried to pull the man off Bethany. They weren't able to dislodge his grip. The man groaned and something snapped. Bethany fell away from the man and Mindy recoiled. His arm hung off his shoulder, clearly broken. But there was no cry of pain, just the continuing groan. The way the arm dangled, it looked like it had detached and was only hanging on because it was caught in the man's long-sleeved shirt. Bethany scrambled away. I pulled them both out of the room and closed the door. "Help me," the man said. I heard a thump on the floor. "You okay?" I asked Bethany. "I'm fine," she said. "He just scared me. Old bastard is strong." "How hard did you hit him?" "I didn't. I just pulled away from him." Something slammed against the door. Mindy squeaked. A breathy moan began emanating from the opposite side of the door. He began pounding. "We're sorry. We'll call for help," Mindy said. Bethany was heading for the front of the house. Come on. We followed. A small table held a stone bowl with a set of keys. I grabbed the keys. The man's groaning continued and got louder, morphing into a begging plea in which the words were indistinct but pitiful. As quiet as it was outside, anyone nearby would hear it as surely as if it were a house alarm. Bethany hesitated, as if deciding which way to run. I wanted nothing more than to pick a direction and go. We had just assaulted and injured a senior citizen. But then he got quiet. I resolved to bring back help. I looked at the keys in my hands and thought about the one vehicle we had seen running after the blackout. I went to the side door of the garage. One of the keys fit the lock, and I opened the door. Along the walls were well-arranged tools on a pegboard. A big vehicle took up most of the space inside, something that looked like an old-timey Chevy Suburban. I shined the light on the car. It was an international travelall with wood paneling, and it looked like it was in pristine shape. What makes you think it's going to work? Bethany asked. Don't know until you check. I got in the car and put the key in the ignition. The car had power. The engine took a couple of turns, but it started up. The gas was on E, but we could deal with that once we got out of the garage. Bethany went to work trying to open the garage door. It's padlocked from the outside, Mindy said. I saw a master lock key on the keychain and pulled it off the ring. Mindy took it and ran outside. Deanne, she called. I got out of the vehicle. What? I was going to die of carbon monoxide poisoning if I waited for her to open the padlock. I went to the side door and almost bumped into her. She was staring at the house. The man stood there in the doorway, his good arm limp at his side. The other one, the broken one, was gone. Bethany, we have to go, I said. Unlock the door and we'll get out of here, she called. I mean now. The man didn't quite look at us as he stepped down from the porch. Help me, he said. In the daylight, I could see the extent of the bumps. His mouth and nostrils were the only visible features of his face left. It had overgrown his eyes and ears. His remaining hand twitched as if it were being stimulated by electric shocks. What's wrong with him? Bethany said. She stood at my side and looked like she was about to move towards him. Don't get close, I said. He was shuffling in our direction. Then from somewhere nearby, I heard a loud bellow. I was certain it was Officer Bird. The old man answered with a wordless shout, and then to us he said again, Help me. We ran. Chapter 13. Second night. The world below was dark. Earlier readings indicated there was an industrial presence on the surface, yet no artificial lights or functioning power grids anywhere meant the Alpha Guardian's arrival had disrupted the entire planet. This had been by her design, and this was the purpose her dispersed fleet had served. The extent of the destruction was uncertain. If the natives were particularly fragile, perhaps this had brought about a planet-wide extinction. Wouldn't it be a fatal flaw if the natives of the world below had been struck dead by the electromagnet surge, leaving nothing for the mindless hive to feed upon? A dead planet to be consumed by the dead. Magus could appreciate the irony. If that was to be the fate that ended his tragic cycle, so be it. We crossed several yards with easily scalable fences. Somewhere more dogs were barking. We tromped through an enclosure holding a bunch of chickens that parted before us like a tide. Wait, hold on, Bethany said. We were all panting. This is stupid. Where are we going? I just shook my head. I took a moment to catch my breath. There was nothing behind us, but we also hadn't gone that far. We need a car or a phone, I said. We had a car. It ran. You heard whatever it was getting close, and then the old guy. Maybe he had a prosthetic that came loose when he grabbed me, Bethany said. You want to go back and check? I asked. Mindy had the panicked deer look. She didn't like that we had stopped. At least let's go back to the road, Bethany said. We cut across a neatly laid-out vegetable garden and past a scarecrow dressed like an old woman with a gray wig. A barbed wire fence marked the side of the main road. I looked both ways and pointed in the direction that led away from town. The homes were sparser and the trees thicker. The shoulder of the road was narrow. If there had been traffic, walking would have been hazardous. The smoke here seemed to cling to the tops of the trees. It became darker as we walked, even though by my estimation it was only early afternoon. Eventually, we saw no more fences, the landscape and property lines giving way to open space. No trespassing and no hunting signs were everywhere. Bethany kept looking behind us. "You hear something?" I asked.
"This is a bad idea. Where are we going?"
"Anywhere but there."
"I'm tired,"
Mindy said. "Just a little further," I said. "Someone has to be out here who can help us." Around a couple more turns, we came across a large U.S. Forest Service lot. The chain-link gate was locked and topped with rusty barbed wire. A shoebox temporary office lay just beyond a few large pieces of heavy equipment. I found a call box and hit the button. It didn't make any sounds, so I assumed there was no power.
"I don't like this place,"
Mindy said. "At least there's no one here," I said. "I don't see any personal vehicles. Might be a good place to catch our breath." Bethany gave the gate a tug. It held fast. "Over, under, or through," I said. "Make your dex roll."
"What?"
I shook my head. Hopeless. Over proved the easiest. The barbed wire was the old stuff and not the razor wire that looked like it would shred you if you touched it. The pointy tops of the chain links were more painful. They caught at my sleeve and ripped my pant cuff as I pulled myself over. "I'll be right back with something that will make it easier for us to get across." I went to the office and looked inside the window. It was dark, but it didn't look like anyone was home. I knocked anyway and waited a moment. There was no mat at the door. I would have to find something else. I checked the first bulldozer and found the door unlocked. It had a rubber floor mat. I took it and returned to the fence. With the mat laid over the top of the barbed wire, climbing over was easy. Bethany got us inside the office by breaking the window of the door with a rock. There wasn't much inside except 2 private offices on either end of the building and a few desks in between. None of the desks had much in the way of personal property on them. If anyone worked here, they were the most boring humans on the planet. We went through all the drawers and found little but some chewing gum. Mindy passed the pieces around. Chewing the sugar-free spearmint gum only made me thirsty. We all took a drink from the water cooler, putting our mouths to the spigot as there were no cups.
"Well, this blows,"
Bethany said. I picked up the phone and heard no dial tone. Mindy plopped down on a chair and watched as I checked all the other phones. I knew it was futile, but having something to do, even if it only took me a minute, was a comforting distraction.
"We keep heading north on this road,"
Bethany said.
"Waiting here is a waste of time."
"And what's north of here? Grass Valley? How far is it? I'm guessing over 20 miles.
"There has to be something between here and there."
"Towns? I don't think so. There's more homes, no doubt, but what about the fire?" I went through the drawers again, emptying their contents out on the desks. A staple remover looked like the detached fangs of some monster. I clicked it a few times in Bethany's direction. "Are you done?" she asked. I noticed a closed white metal box attached to the wall just past Bethany. I went to it and found it was locked. I could just get my fingers behind a corner of the door. I tugged at it. It felt like the metal was just about to bend when the cabinet detached from the wall and crashed to the floor.
"Nice job,"
Bethany said, smirking.
"It's probably a lockbox for their keys to the equipment."
I went outside. Leaning against the wall of the office were a few larger tools. I grabbed a digging bar. Bethany just watched, clearly amused, as I smashed the box open enough to reach in and grab the keys.
"What's on your hand?"
she asked. My sleeve had rolled up, revealing some bumps. The rash had spread. I had been absent-mindedly scratching it off and on, but had paid it little mind. I pulled the sleeve back down. "It's nothing,"
Looks like what was on the old guy's face and hands.
It's just poison oak. Keys in hand, I went outside and checked the bulldozer. It wouldn't start. None of the other equipment would either.
We'd drive in that?
Mindy asked. If it'll start, yes. Nothing had any power, so I had the car in the garage started.
We need to start walking if we're going to get anywhere,
Bethany said. She was right. I looked around at the rest of the lot. We hadn't checked a row of metal sheds. I unlocked one and found tools. Chainsaws, a jackhammer, chains, hooks, tree climbing harnesses, and more. I grabbed a flat pry bar.
What's that for?
Bethany asked. In case we need to break anything. She took a long-handled axe and tested its heft. Mindy didn't appear to want to touch anything. Okay, I said. Now we can go. Not much further down the road, we saw a brown wood sign with yellow lettering marking a turnoff. Arthur Pearson Campground. Think this is where the boys were staying? I asked.
We should check,
Bethany said. There was no one at the small ranger hut, and next to it were an honor box with a sign-in sheet and a posted board with fees for campground usage. Beyond that, the narrow road went up an incline to a parking lot. A sedan, a pickup with a shell on the bed, and one of our vans were parked there. Just beyond a disabled parking spot was a restroom. A kiosk held a map displaying the layout of the campground and several posters about local animal life to watch out for. Apparently the squirrels here carried the bubonic plague. I have to go to the bathroom, Mindy said. I did too. I was glad she said something first, though. I sighed with fake exasperation. Go ahead. We'll keep watch. I walked around the bathrooms. They stank. I checked a hose spigot and was faintly surprised to see the campground had water pressure. Bethany went to each vehicle and tried the doors. The van was unlocked. She must not have found anything interesting because she returned to wait on Mindy. I entered the men's room and checked the stalls.
Are you amusing yourself?
Bethany asked when I came out. I don't like surprises. I opened the door to the wheelchair-accessible bathroom, then screamed and backed away. Something was growing on the toilet. It was a fleshy lump the size of a basketball. Bethany stepped past me for a closer look.
What is that?
She asked. No idea, I said. I took a moment to calm myself. The lump reminded me of a beehive, the way you see them in cartoons, except here were no insects flying around.
Looks like a piece of rotten fruit,
Bethany said. She held out the axe to poke it. Don't touch it. Hello? Mindy called from the ladies' room. What's going on? Nothing, I said. Just finish up. I heard a toilet flush and the sink turn on. It ran, and ran, and ran. Will you hurry up? I need to wash up, just a sec. Keep an eye on that, I said, pointing to the beehive-shaped lump of living cheese growing on the toilet seat. I went into the ladies' room. Mindy was scrubbing her arms with the vigor of someone trying to remove layers of skin. I saw bumps on the insides of her wrists. It won't come off, she said. Her lips quivered. She was taking gasping breaths like she couldn't get enough air. I knew an oncoming panic attack when I saw one. I grabbed her hands. Stop. It's probably just poison oak. I got some too. I don't get poison oak. Everyone does when they try hard enough. We've been out working the trail. We'll find some cream for it first thing. She nodded. I grabbed some of the coarse brown paper towels and dried off her hands, then got a good look at the bumps. They were identical to the growths on Officer Byrd and the old man, and to what I had growing on my own arm. I didn't see any poison oak, she said. It was all over the place. But I kept my gloves on. I pushed her along out of the bathroom. Bethany waited, keeping an eye on the infested bathroom.
What took so long?
Nothing, I said. My own arm was itching. I resisted the urge to scratch. We walked the loop of campsites. The boys had clearly set their sleeping bags down near and around a giant tipped-over ice chest marked Property, Placer County. The bags were the El Cheapo County issue, blue, the same type that was stuffed into one of the storage closets on the girls' side of Juvie Hall.
They all left,
Mindy said. Looks that way, I said. Bethany looked angry. She surveyed the abandoned camp and licked the front of her teeth. This is a waste of time. Let's go. Where? I asked. It's getting late and I don't really want to be out on the road at night fumbling around. You think staying here is a better idea? That's just asking for it. What happened to them is what's going to happen to us.
What happened to them?
Mindy asked. Bethany and I looked at her. We don't know, Bethany said before I could. Look, I said. I'm not saying stay on this patch of ground, but the van's open. We can sleep inside. It still felt like late afternoon, but the dark sky above was hard to read. We returned to the van and went through it for anything that might make our stay more comfortable. Mindy just watched as Bethany and I opened the doors and dug through every backseat pouch and looked under every seat. The 3 bench seats would serve us fine as makeshift beds, but we had little in the way of blankets. No one even suggested using the abandoned sleeping bags as if they were tainted. I used my pry bar to wrench open the window of one of the locked cars. It popped and shattered. I got inside and went through the glove box and opened the trunk. My B&E garnered no comments. I didn't find anything and went on to the next car. An old Grand Am that might have been gold before its paint gave up the ghost. It had a box of off-brand dog biscuits and a pile of blankets in the back. The blankets smelled like dog. I distributed them and shook the box of doggy treats. Who's hungry? There were no takers. Mindy and I hunkered down just inside the van's open sliding door. No one spoke. The blanket was warm. I watched the bathrooms, worried that staying so close to whatever was growing in there was a mistake. But this whole misadventure wouldn't have happened if I had volunteered for fire duty, and I would never have gotten caught up in any of my crimes if I had stuck with my old high school circle of geeks. But no, Deanne had to hang out with the cool kids when a slot opened up. Having a mother willing to purchase alcohol and allow me to host parties made me an instant hit with the early dropout fast-track crowd. Fresh in my memory was an incident where I knocked my ex-friend Tammy's books into the muddy ground when a group of us overtook her as we were leaving school. All her books got dirty, including a copy of Robert Jordan's The Dragon Reborn. The look on her face had told me my betrayal was complete. There's a circle of hell for folks like me. Maybe I was there now. Bethany sat in the front passenger seat, absently clicking the radio buttons. It was irritating. That's not helping, I said. She knew it, but kept doing it.
Maybe we should look again for keys,
Mindy said. It won't work, I said. It must have been something like an EMP. Everything electronic doesn't work. A what? Bethany asked. An EMP. Electromagnetic pulse. How do you know? I don't, but I know my Matrix movies and that's my best guess for what happened. Mindy scrunched her face.
Then why did that car start?
I don't know. Maybe because it was inside the garage. Bethany muttered something. I knew I was the target of the comment, but it didn't bother me. She stepped out of the van. Be right back, she said. She took her axe and headed off down the parking lot. It was getting dark. I looked at Mindy.
Maybe she needs to pee,
Mindy said. I nodded. I had no plans of returning to the restrooms either. Bethany returned several minutes later with a lit cigarette in hand and a pack in her shirt pocket. She didn't offer us any, not that I would have taken one. Where'd you get those? The ranger station. She settled in by the driver's side door and puffed away, like there wasn't enough smoke in the air. The night grew strange. The bugs and birds couldn't decide if they were going to kick it in gear or not. One minute they'd be making their racket, and the next they'd fall into silence. More than once I looked around the front and back of the van, thinking I had heard a noise, but never saw anything. Bethany seemed unfazed by it all. She went through a few of her cigarettes, the gleaming ember the only light in sight. Mindy crawled into the rearmost seat and curled up and went to sleep. I resisted the urge to shine the light on whatever owl started screeching above us.
"Should have kept going down the road,"
Bethany said. "Be my guest." She took a drag from her cigarette, staring at me. A branch snapped somewhere up in the trees. We both looked up. "Just a branch falling," I said. A silence followed. Suddenly something started thrashing above us and making a high-pitched howl. I turned my light on and shined it upward, but the sound stopped and I couldn't see anything. I switched the light off and got into the van. Bethany dropped her cigarette and climbed in behind me. We locked up. Silence followed. Minutes passed and I began to relax, wondering whether my imagination was fueling my fear. I heard the distinct sound of fingernails scratching skin. Mindy was going to town on her arms. "That'll only make it worse," I said.
"Can't help it,"
she said. Bethany leaned forward over the dashboard and looked up through the windshield. "Anything?" I asked. She shook her head. I wanted nothing more than to speculate on what might have been going on up in the trees, but not with Mindy in earshot. I bundled up on my own seat and tried not to think about it. I was woken up by a thump on the roof of the van. It sounded heavier than a pine cone, but no bounce or roll followed. I lay on the bench seat with my eyes open. I couldn't see anything in the dark beyond the glass. We were adrift in a sea of black. I could barely see my own hand as I grabbed the seat in front of me and sat up. Something moved slowly along the roof. I heard Bethany shift in the front seat. She hissed to get my attention. I kept quiet and focused on the sound above. Whatever it was slid down the windshield. It sounded like a squeegee against the glass. Then all was quiet again. We could do little more than wait. Sleep was out of the question. Lights in the sky painted reflective patterns against the van windows. By my estimation, it was a couple of hours before dawn, and the green light show had returned. I looked up at it as best I could. The stars were visible through the trees. The smoke must have cleared, although I didn't remember much in the way of a breeze. Even with the restricted view, the lights were beautiful. For a moment, I forgot that there might be something just outside the van. Waiting. I wanted to open the door for a better look at the sky. Bethany was also taken in by the lights. I could see her face even in the gloom. Both of her cheeks were covered by the growth. Her lips moved in silent words. Then she saw me looking and sat back in the shadows. "Beth," I whispered. She didn't reply. For the rest of the night, I focused on every sound coming from Bethany, lest she try to attack me while I slept, but her breathing was steady and she didn't stir. As the night gave way to the earliest lights of dawn, the heavenly fireworks dissipated. Bethany hadn't tried anything, had barely made a sound, but I knew she was awake. She had remained sitting upright. My legs were cramped. Even if she had tried something, I wouldn't have been able to do much to stop her. Mindy had slept through it all. She even snored. There was a certain comfort to listening to her soft, steady wheeze. If Bethany attacked, at least one of us would die peacefully in our sleep. My arm hurt. Even touching it was painful, and scratching was excruciating. I pulled the blanket away and tried to examine it. It was puffy, and I imagined that in full light it would look like I had one Popeye arm minus the anchor tattoo. I dared lean forward. Bethany sat with her legs on the front seat. In one hand she gripped the axe. Her head was down as if she had nodded off. "Beth," I whispered. She looked at me. Her face was cloaked in shadow. Enough loose hair hung around her face that the infection was covered. "Are you okay?" It took her a moment to answer. "Why wouldn't I be?" she asked. I breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe she was okay and we had time to get out of here and find a doctor. I looked out every side of the van. I didn't see anything, which meant whatever had plopped down on us might be lurking right underneath the vehicle. "I'm checking outside," I said. I opened the side door as quietly as possible. This brought Bethany into action. She tried to get up, but apparently her legs had fallen asleep and it took her a moment to straighten out. I gripped my pry bar and jumped out of the van and far enough away that even the longest armed troll would have a hard time reaching me. I got down on the asphalt for a look. No trolls. Nothing was there. Mindy was up and leaning out of the van, watching me. I walked the length of the parking lot, looking under and around the 2 other cars. Maybe it had just been a kamikaze night squirrel messing with us, but whatever had happened to the people in the market hadn't waited for night. "We should go." I could see a plume of white breath as I spoke. The shivers followed, but I couldn't bear the thought of getting back inside the van. We collected our blankets. I suggested we get a drink of water before leaving, but none of us wanted to get close to the restrooms. We were all out of the van when Mindy finally noticed Bethany's face. "Oh my God, Beth." "We've all got it," I said. "It's what was all over the old man, and Officer Byrd and the others." Mindy looked down at her swollen hands and arms with renewed horror. She started in on the scratching. "Just stop!" I shouted. She stopped. Even Bethany appeared surprised. "It's not just poison oak. I'm sorry I lied. It looks like it's growing where the old man touched you." I showed my arm. They both recoiled. "Mine started before any of them. I'm not sure how. Maybe it's in the air. There's no way to be sure. But we need to get help." Mindy looked like she was holding back tears. She nodded. Bethany had the look of a killer from a slasher flick. Her hair did little to conceal her deformed jawline and cheeks. Did I mention she was carrying an axe? "Without food or water, how long are we going to last just walking?" Bethany asked. I didn't have an answer. I felt shaky and cold and tired and a little freaked out. Getting away from French Meadows was the only thing that made sense. But the uncertainty of finding a vehicle or a place to take shelter grew. "That car ran," I said. "It would mean going back. The gas was low, but we could find more fuel." "There were a few full gas cans back at the forestry lot," Bethany said. "Go back?" Mindy asked. "If not that, then what else?" I asked. She didn't answer. I was glad I didn't have to convince her of our plan. Both Bethany and I were heading in the same direction, and she would follow. Chapter 14. The Boys of French Meadows. The Alpha Guardian made planetfall. She decelerated at the last moment, leaving a visible trail in the atmosphere. Without even reaching out to her, Magus knew she had survived. Her ships followed in waves, separating into smaller modules which broke apart on impact against the atmosphere. Multiple clouds of hive particles and other debris spread over the planet. They flowed across the world like a tide, an unstoppable storm. An electromagnetic light show followed, playing across the clouds. So much had led to this moment. The sheer magnitude of such an operation stirred a cold respect within Magus. The hive had stripped one world clean to have enough matter and energy to make it to the next. The scale of such an undertaking was amazing, even though he understood the price. Their arrival here was the culmination of the hive's entire history. The latest stepping stone in a cycle begun before his race had ever joined consciousness. The hive's death had cut the cycle short, but now the Alpha may have gotten it back on track. The second wave took longer to descend. It must have slowed to maximize its chances of survival through the atmosphere. Lightning arced in the atmosphere as the particles continued to pierce it and fall around the planet. Hundreds of satellites belonging to the natives of the planet now hung dead in near orbit. Magus detected no spaceships or stations on their moon. The natives' nascent efforts in space were over. The darkened world would be continually pummeled by the electromagnetic effect arriving with each subsequent wave of descending invaders, the disruption only slightly muted by the moisture and oxygen-rich atmosphere. He turned his sensors to the other minders about to make planetfall. Some lived while others did not. A few of the living even used the dead as shields to survive entry. All of them would act as hosts for a portion of the hive particles. Even in death, the minders would serve their former masters. Had those who had perished enjoyed a final moment of liberated thought? Magus hoped they had at least dreamed of home before burning up.
Somehow the walk back to town felt longer even though we stuck to the road. Bethany was correct about the gas cans, and we now carried 5 half-gallon red plastic cans among us. A breeze picked up that I could feel even through my blanket. As the trees thinned and we began walking between the houses, I once again had the unmistakable feeling we were being watched. The fact that there was no one out here and nothing making a sound, no dogs, no airplanes, nothing except Bethany, who'd started in on a persistent cough, only underscored how dead everything was. How many of these homes were empty, and how many had more victims of the mystery blight that was now afflicting us? We should have headed north. We came to the barbed wire fence that would take us through the property with the vegetable garden and the chickens. Bethany nodded down that way. I pointed further down the road. Along the road we went. More direct, but we were exposed. Even more troubling, Bethany didn't argue. I saw Mindy was flagging. "Almost there," I said. I took the red can of gas she carried and adjusted my load. I imagined the 3 of us were a sight with the blankets and tools and gas cans, a trio of starter characters with crappy gear. Maybe if this was all some hallucination we were sharing, someone would call the cops and we would be taken to an appropriate facility for those suffering psychotic breakdowns. We came to the gravel driveway near the market that would lead to the old man's house. Each crunching step felt loud. The house's door was still wide open, but the old man was nowhere in sight. I still had the keys. I clicked the padlock on the front of the garage door open and removed it. The single-piece garage door was rusted and warped, and it didn't pull up easily. Bethany and I both had to lift and push it above our heads. The wood creaked and the springs groaned. I thought it would fall back on us, but it held. The travelall was still there as we had left it. The driver's side door was still open. I stepped carefully inside the garage and checked around the back and the inside of the car with my flashlight. No one home. I found the keys still in the ignition. The engine didn't start. We put gas in the tank. Once it was all in, I tried the engine again. Nothing. Not even a click of the starter. No lights on the dash when I turned the key.
"Battery's drained,"
Bethany said. I slammed the steering wheel.
"Calm down,"
she said. She searched the garage. On a tool bench, she found a battery charger. "Does it have power?" She turned it on.
"Yup."
We connected it to the battery. It had a red light on the top and a dark meter that would apparently show up when the battery was ready. "How long will this thing take?" I asked. Bethany surveyed the property line.
"Just a few minutes, hopefully."
I paced back and forth in front of the car. The light on the charger didn't change. I poked it a couple of times but quit before Bethany said anything. Finally, the first yellow light came on, then a second one. Then we got our first green. I wanted to shake the thing to make it go faster. A sustained howl broke the air. At first I couldn't tell which direction it came from, but once I stepped away from the garage, I knew. Whatever was making the harrowing sound was at the next house further up the gravel driveway. Thick rows of oleander blocked all but the top of the house. It was louder than any dog or coyote or human scream I'd ever heard, and it just kept on going. Then it abruptly cut off, followed by the shattering of glass and the splintering of wood. "Can we start the car?" Mindy asked. The bellows started up again, closer than before. It was moving our way. Suddenly, my hand began to throb, and a sharp pain exploded in my head. I heard the branches of the oleander snap, but I was frozen in place. My limbs refused to move. It wasn't fear, but something else. Part of me wanted to go towards whatever was smashing its way through the high wall of bushes. "I'm here, Officer Bird," I whispered. I heard the engine whir, chug, try to start. Mindy tugged at my arm. "Come on," she shouted in my ear. It snapped me out of my daze, but still I hesitated. I saw part of what was coming through the thick wall of vegetation. It was huge. The shout became a laugh.
"Inmate,"
Officer Bird said.
"I charge you with unlawful departure. The goddess will be displeased."
What? I recognized his voice, no question, but something about him also reminded me of Officer Taylor. The horn of the travelall began to blow. I ran into the garage and climbed into the vehicle. The engine still wasn't running. Bethany was turning the key, but the motor wasn't catching. "I thought you had it," I said. From outside came the loud crash of the oleander wall being destroyed. Whatever Officer Bird had become had just broken through. The engine made a tired sound that only got weaker. I reached my hand over and put it on Bethany's. She relented and stopped turning the key. The engine went silent. "Count to 5, I said.
"Come out,"
Officer Bird called. The side of the garage shook violently, as if a vehicle had collided with the outside wall. Tools fell.
"Inmates."
"Start the car!" Mindy screamed. I forced myself to calmly tick off a 5 count with my fingers. Then I turned the key a click forward. I saw the lights inside the dash come to life. A shadow crossed the window, moving towards the open garage door. Bethany turned the key the rest of the way, and the travelall roared to life. "Go," I whispered. Bethany threw it in drive and floored it. We emerged from the garage, but something loomed in our way just as we emerged from the garage. I saw one arm, then more arms grabbing at the vehicle. A massive shape buffeted the travelall. Again came the ungodly howl.
"Inmates."
Mindy was screaming. I clung to my seat and the dashboard and prepared for a collision. But the travelall blew past the looming shape. Bethany turned down the gravel driveway and headed for the road. I refused to look back. Bethany gripped the steering wheel with both hands, and her foot didn't let up on the gas even as we made the road. The tires squealed as the travelall made a tight turn. I thought it might roll. "Easy," I shouted. Bethany let up on the gas, but not by much. We sideswiped a high curb around a drain in the road. The vehicle shuddered as we catapulted forward. The left side of the vehicle sank on the soft shoulder. I heard a loud bang as we bottomed out. Momentum saved us. We kept rolling, all the tires again finding purchase on the asphalt. I saw large handprints on the glass. The impressions were smeared and misshapen. I finally dared look back. No one was following. "We made it," I said. "Slow down." Mindy was curled up and sliding down out of her seat. Her hands were cupped over her ears. "It's okay," I said. "We're on the road. You're safe." "I can still hear him," Mindy said. The travelall slowed. Before I could ask what she was doing, Bethany turned in at the hotel. She was honking even as we passed by the office. We pulled up to the last block of rooms. The 3 girls weren't outside. Bethany laid on the horn. I put a hand on her arm. If they're here, they heard. She relented and took her hand off the steering column. "Inmate," she said. "What?" "What?" she asked back, annoyed. She got out of the vehicle and went to one of the rooms. She pounded on the door. "Check the other rooms," she shouted. I turned to Mindy. "Stay here." Pry bar in hand, I ran upstairs and tugged on each door and knocked. "Hey, come on, we're leaving." The doors and windows appeared undisturbed. If the 3 had stayed put, they were safe. But no one answered. The doors looked like heavy wood with metal around where the door hardware met the frame. My puny pry bar wouldn't be much help. I considered busting in the windows, but there were too many rooms to check, and the thought of Officer Bird or whatever he was catching up with us helped me make up my mind. I came back downstairs. I'll check around back. Bethany didn't acknowledge me. I moved closer to her. Finally, her eyes flicked up and made contact with mine. She nodded. I didn't want to ask her the obvious question. None of us were okay. The sooner we got out of there and back to civilization and a hospital, the better. The only sound I heard as I rounded the building was the rumbling idle of the Travelall's engine. The back area of the building was little more than a paved trail with minimal landscaping. Each room's bathroom had a small window. All were dark, and none looked broken. If the remaining girls were taking shelter in one of the rooms and not answering, we would have to leave them. We didn't have keys. I returned to the front of the building, and my heart sank. The 3 boys stood in front of the idling Travelall, and Billy was pointing a gun at Bethany. Chapter 15. Downhill. The blue world was a special place of liquid water, land, and a calm atmosphere. The system had given the planet every advantage: the gas giants, the moon, the size of the star, and its axial tilt. Parts of the atmosphere churned and roiled, but it was nothing like Magus's home. Planet-wide storms would assault entire regions of his world for a life cycle at a time. This was a gentle place. Whether the dominant intelligent life forms were also gentle didn't matter. If they were weak, they would fall. And if they were strong, they would need his help to survive. I froze. Billy wore a peculiar half-smile on his face. His eyes looked droopy. The gun wobbled as if it were heavy for Billy to hold. "What are you guys doing here?" I asked. Billy shrugged. "We didn't make it as far as we thought." "Where's Monique and the other girls? And we had 3 more here we can't find." His eyes shifted. "Monique and the other 2 got spooked. We had a good hiding spot with food and supplies." Just then, I caught a whiff of the supplies he was talking about, the dank aroma hanging heavy around the 3 like a cloud. "So Monique and the others just left?" He nodded. "Just like that." "I don't believe you." A boy with high-arching eyebrows said, "It doesn't matter what you believe. You have a car that we need." Bethany had just been standing there, but now she shook her head. "You're not taking it." "Hey, you don't have a say in this," Billy said. "The car's ours, so now it's gas, grass, or ass, and we're full up on 2 of those. Back off." Billy punctuated his words with emphatic thrusts of the gun barrel. He then pointed the weapon in my direction. "And drop the crowbar." I dropped the pry bar with a clang. Bethany's axe lay at her feet. Billy stepped up to the driver's side door and looked in back where Mindy was still sitting. "Well, hello, beautiful. It's Mindy, right?" "Don't take our car," Mindy said. "It's not yours, is it? And you and your friends can come along if you know how to behave. That's not entirely unreasonable, is it? There's room for everybody." "Mindy, get out of the car," I said. Billy looked over at me with a hurt expression. "Maybe she wants to come with." "Maybe she doesn't." "Hey, we believe in democracy. Let the girl decide for herself." The boy with the eyebrows squinted, looking closer at Bethany. "Billy, this one don't look so good." The bumps and swelling now covered the bottom part of Bethany's face, and the end of her nose, clearly visible in the daylight. "What is that on your face?" Billy asked. "You look a little like one of our COs and a lot like an old lady we ran into." "What happened to your CO?" I asked. "All that matters is that you're not going to want to miss this ride out of here. But your friend here can stay," he said, nodding at Bethany. It was then that my arm decided to start to burn again. This was joined by shooting pains. My skin was alive and crawling with bees. I was on fire. I grabbed the swollen limb and squeezed it, but touching it made it so much worse. I bit my lip and winced. "Mindy, get out of the car," I gasped. Mindy emerged from the vehicle. Both of her arms were puffy and blighted with bumps. It was growing along the side of her neck as well, a swollen lump like a tumor. Billy recoiled. He pointed the gun at all of us.
Back off! Get away from me!
I grabbed Mindy and pulled her close. You could take us to the hospital, I said, feeling a growing panic. Please, we'll sit in the back. The two other boys climbed into the travelall. Billy gave us a wide berth and got into the driver's seat. He put the travelall in gear, backed up, and sped out of the lot. Bethany watched them go. She just stood there, stiff as a board. I shook her shoulder. She took a moment to respond. Then, as if in slow motion, she looked down at me.
I can hear him, she said.
Hear who?
Officer Byrd. I hear his voice, and others as well. Officer Taylor is there somewhere. We're not alone.
That's really creepy. Look, we can't just wait here for Officer Byrd or whatever he is now to find us, or for Billy and his crew to come back. I'm pretty sure they're not coming back, Mindy said. She actually sounded calmer than me. That's not the point. We hit the road on foot. We hang tough and walk until we get somewhere where we can find help, okay? No one said anything. We grabbed a few more snacks from the broken vending machine in the lounge. I again considered breaking in the office. The manager had to have supplies, but part of me worried he might be as bad as Officer Byrd or the old man at the house. We started walking. I kept looking behind us. I couldn't help it. The shoulder of the road was narrow enough, and soon we were leaving French meadows and descending a winding road between blind corners with plenty of trees to obscure vision. After a couple of hours walking, the lack of any cars was even more disconcerting. We passed several smaller roads with homey-sounding names, like Platform Bridge Road, Laurel View Terrace, and Winding Way. But a lengthy detour to an unknown location was out of the question. I had my shirt off and wrapped around my swollen arm, made into a makeshift sling. It didn't help. Each step jostled it. It felt like a water balloon waiting to burst. Neither Mindy nor Bethany said much as they plodded along behind me. Bethany no longer had her axe. I had picked up the pry bar again but had dropped it not long after we started our trek. We couldn't have found the only working car in the area. Someone had to have another garaged vehicle that would start and had family or friends back in town. But no one drove past us. We had the road to ourselves. Soon I was walking down the center along the double yellow lines. Mindy stopped at a paved driveway. A mailbox had the name The Lewis Family attached to its side in gold letters. I kept going, mostly because my legs and feet were on autopilot. Come on, I said. I'm tired, she said, and she headed up the driveway. I looked back at Bethany. Bethany's face was a literal mask. The growth was over her ears and encroaching on her left eye. If it made Officer Byrd go nuts, how long would it be until it claimed Bethany? Or me? Stopping's a mistake, I said. Bethany paused for a moment and then followed Mindy. I exhaled and went after them. The driveway got steeper and led us up a hill to a cabin-style home that stood above twin carports. One carport had a covered car while the other was empty. Mindy was already on top of the wooden stairs when I caught up to her. Bethany brought up the rear, taking one step at a time as if she was totally spent. The front door was locked. I stood on the thick doormat and tried the bell, then knocked when I didn't hear the bell work. There was a statue of a greyhound dog next to the door, and a rock with the words, "Bless this home," etched into it. The porch wrapped around the back of the home. Large picture windows looked out at a spectacular view of the lower hills and the valley beyond. The afternoon sun shined down on the deck, and it was shielded from the breeze. Oak and pine trees grew tall around the house, but they must have been cleared and trimmed to maintain the view. I tried a glass sliding door, but it too was locked. I opened a plastic bench and found some gardening tools, empty pots, and plastic tablecloths. Nothing ideal for smashing a window, but one of the chairs would do. Mindy sat at a round wooden table and put her head down on her arms. Bethany caught up with us. She had the decorative rock from the front door in her hand. I tensed up. As her face was inscrutable, I thought she was coming to attack me.
"Let's go inside," she said.
"That's going to be loud." Bethany turned the rock over and showed it to me. The bottom had a rectangle compartment in the bottom. She produced a key and handed it over. It fit the front door. I went inside. An alarm keypad hung on the wall by the door, but its screen was blank. "Hello?" I called as I walked in. "We're looking for a phone. We need help. Anyone here?" The inside was immaculate, with barely anything on the counters or shelves. A display table near the stairs up told me why. It held a plastic stand with flyers and business cards for a realtor. There hadn't been a realtor's sign posted outside or at the property line. Perhaps it was just getting listed. I went upstairs. The beds were made in each of the bedrooms. The carpet had vacuum marks. I found clothes and personal items in the closets. Whoever was selling still had stuff here. I returned downstairs. Bethany was looking in the fridge and the kitchen cabinet doors were open. I began closing them as if it were my house.
"Not much here," she said.
"Maybe the owner died," I said. "Place is for sale. I doubt any realtor will be coming here anytime soon." I unlocked the sliding door and went to Mindy. She was asleep. I tugged on her arm to wake her up. She uttered a wordless complaint, the type the 4-year-old me would make when forced to go to bed instead of staying on the couch watching monster movies. "Come on, get up." I helped her up and walked her inside. A brown leather sectional couch was set by the windows. I put her down and replaced her dog blanket with a thick throw blanket off one of the living room chairs. Then I went to the kitchen to find something to eat. Bethany hadn't had any luck. I didn't trust her scrounging abilities, but I quickly found that indeed there was little to be had besides some condiments and a box of tea. Then, in a combination laundry room pantry, I found a wrapped case of canned fruit cocktail in heavy syrup. Gross. But I brought it out to the living room and found some paper towels and spoons. Mindy perked up once I placed a can next to her. Bethany grabbed one and sat in a large recliner. Soon we were eating the fruit and slurping down the sickeningly sweet syrup. I stopped myself after 2 cans, worrying about what the mushy fruit was going to do to me. "There's tea," I said. "I'll put some water on." It was lemon chamomile. Whoever had once lived there didn't believe in caffeine. Or food. Maybe they took it all with them. While in the kitchen, I tested the phone, but it was dead. At least the water pressure was good. I thought about how dirty I was. I wanted to brush my teeth and scrub the grime from my body. Other parts of me itched besides my arm. Was it spreading, or was that my imagination? I put a kettle on the gas stove and lit the burner with a match from one of the drawers. Once I finished up making the tea, the thought of scrubbing down and seeing the extent of what was growing on me took me upstairs. I found a fresh bar of soap and shampoo in a medicine cabinet. Fresh giant towels were hung in the bathroom. I started the shower and peeled off my clothing. The bathroom skylight provided enough light to see, but not in much detail. Maybe that was a good thing. The swollen arm looked like a giant cluster of blisters in various stages of bursting. Pulling my shirt off was agony. The skin was moist and slimy and stank of sweaty socks. I might have cried if I wasn't so tired. I reached out with the bad arm into the jet of water, not knowing what to expect. The water felt cool, although I saw steam rising inside the shower stall. I checked with my other hand. Now it felt hot. Maybe a little too hot. I turned the temperature down. My arm was warm to the touch, but the rest of me wasn't. I fought off a moment of panic. My arm was a foreign thing now. Painful, something sick that needed to be removed. But then my anxiety subsided. There was nothing practical that could be done. I showered. After drying off, I didn't want my old clothes anymore. I walked naked with my towel to the bedroom and opened the closet door. Everything was for a woman several sizes larger than me. The pair of jeans I pulled out could have fit 2 of me. At the bottom of one stack high on a shelf, I found a red tracksuit with white stripes down the arms and legs. Still big, but better than the rest of the clothes. I pulled it on. Then I saw the bed. It was piled with pillows, and the comforter looked like you could drown in it if you laid on top of it. Which is exactly what I did.
"Hey," Bethany said.
I woke up. I was disoriented, thinking I was either home or at juvie hall, and forgetting for a moment that I was neither place. It was dark. I could see Bethany's shadow standing above me. How long had I been asleep? "I'm up," I said. "Is everything okay?"
"There's something you should see."
The night sky was alive with light. As before, pulsing lines of green covered the expanse, but now the smoke was mostly clear and we had a perfect view. Yellows, blues, and purples danced with the dominant greens. I stepped past Bethany and went out onto the porch. Mindy sat curled up on a deck lounge chair, the blanket tucked around her. "It's the goddess," she said. "This is her speaking to us." Her breath hung in the air. "Aren't you cold?" "It doesn't matter." Something about the scene above and in the valley bothered me. Then I realized there were no lights below. Roseville and the other towns, including Sacramento, should have been giving off at least a dull glow. But it was as if they didn't exist. Small streaks of white zipped high above. I couldn't help but count. 1, then a second, and a third, all within 10 seconds. A meteor shower. What was it all, and how was it connected? It was the most beautiful sight I had ever seen. Yet I knew the disease that clung to my arm and to Mindy and Bethany, and the events in French Meadows were all related to this somehow. "You should have woken me up," I said. "We could have walked further." "I like it here," said Mindy. "All you have to do is listen. Can you hear her?"
"Deanne."
A distant voice. A woman's. My mother was calling me, and I was 7 playing with the neighbor twins out on the sidewalk. They were Cylons, I was a Klingon, and we were blasting each other to bits with our phasers. "I don't hear anything," I said. But then, more pronounced, I heard laughing. A man's voice. I looked around. Bethany was still inside the dark house, so it wasn't her. Mindy hadn't reacted, hadn't moved. The laughter devolved into a long sigh. In my mind, I heard the word inmate. Officer Byrd was coming.